Yo, what's good? Everybody, this is Lambo Calrissian here coming at you with a different kind of video today. I know this is something that you guys normally haven't seen before, but this is a very special video. Very, very special. Because I have someone with me who is really knowledgeable, really smart, really cool guy. You probably see him on Twitter. You see the guy who gives you pretty much all the info of everything that's coming up next in Toku. Ladies and gentlemen, Specialform12.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here and on Lambo Calrissian's channel, so I'm very excited to get into this discussion.
Man, you moving up in the world. First of all, I want to say that because I heard you on Proto Dubs. Like, you guys have a podcast together. Highly recommend you guys go check that out. It's amazing. The first episode had me like, okay, this is pretty good. And we're finna get this weekly, and this is, hopefully we'll get this weekly. This is like what I want to hear. So, congratulations to you. You are really doing some stuff, man. Like, super proactive. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. Because I haven't been mostly very active on my channel besides subtitling the necessary things. I've been mostly helping out other people, Proto Dubs, Versatility, and a lot of their videos and stuff like that. And I've been working on recently some of my own videos, Into Darkness, which is a lot about the villain factions in a lot of Tokusatsu shows. I've already done Inferja, and then the next one will be Akugata from Geki Ranger. So I'm very excited to get that up soon.
You hear that, folks? He got content coming out. Y'all better believe it. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait till you jump on board and do some stuff with that. But that's not why we're here. It was good for you to plug. But the reason why we're here today is because it's been, and you can correct me on this, 2 weeks? About a good 2 weeks, going on 3, since Whole Old Soldier was introduced in Key Rangers. And let me tell y'all something about Whole Old Soldier. Yeah. Whole Old Soldier is amazing. Whole Old Soldier is so amazing that he performs some feats that's not uncommon to Toku as a whole, but it really sets the precedence on how powerful some of these guys are in Toku, which is the reason why we wanted to do this discussion in the first place. I'm a firm believer of figuring out who's stronger than who and having some kind of reason or logic behind it. I'm a huge comic book guy, but the one thing I noticed between comic books and all things Toku in terms of shows, 2 things that we see the most that are very inconsistent is, the inconsistencies of stories and power levels. Like, there's too many inconsistencies that you can see in this one book where Superman can do all these amazing things, and then all of a sudden in another book he's getting just decimated by a guy who he shouldn't be. And it's very confusing. Is it for the sake of the story, or is it just because they're downplaying his powers? So I feel Toku falls into that same pit hole, unfortunately. You wouldn't think it would, because Toei, hey, they do Dragon Ball Z, and there's people who do power scaling for that all the time, and everything's, makes sense for the most part. But with Toku, it's a whole nother, bag of, things that we can't really figure out or anything like that. I want to just do this video because I think it's time for us to start working on that and just figuring out how strong some of these people really are. And it's because of Whole Soldier. And Special Form is the best dude I could possibly think of at the moment to start this whole series of videos with. So how do you feel about power levels and inconsistencies?
I agree with you for the most part. Toei doesn't generally put a lot of effort into power scaling their own riders. It's mostly let's define what the best possible power level or the best possible ability within the range of our own theme is going to be, and let's take that to the maximum of its ability. And we keep that within its range of the show, and we don't really expect a lot of people to dig into that. So when you have situations like Ultimate Kuga, who is powerful enough to destroy the world, compared to Hyper Kabuto, who can change time, you kind of start to have this sort of perception where it's kind of okay, who would generally be stronger in some aspects compared to other ones? And generally not a lot of people take a lot of risk when it comes to comparing them, but that's exactly what these discussions are going to be for, so I'm very excited to get into it.
Before we get started, if you guys haven't seen the episode of Key Rangers, we're gonna spoil just some parts for it if you guys aren't caught up at all. But just to really give you a good idea of what we're talking about, let's look at Whole Old Soldier's example. Let's look at Whole Old Soldier, just his whole introduction, debut, fights, and everything is an example. His first introduction is him fighting all of the giant machines that Don, that the main bad guy in Q Rangers makes. I'm probably gonna butcher his name, so I'm just gonna let Special say it. What was the bad guy's name?
Don Armage.
All right. See, you said it way better than me. So I'm just gonna call him Don. So Don says, activate all of these giant machines, and we're gonna blow up the entire Earth. And Ho Soldier just goes, hey, watch me transform with my really cool sword and shield, and bada bing, bada boom, bada bam, bada bop. He destroys all of them. No Voyager, no extra Q-Tamas, just him by himself. Just goes in and just starts like putting hands on all of them, just slicing them all up. So then not only that, he gets down and he fights Octo Lady. That's what I like calling her. He goes 101 against Octo Lady. He catches her sword with two fingers, which I think is a reference to Gokaiger, because that's what Bosco did to Guy's Gokai spear.
Yeah.
So he catches that with two fingers, and then pops her, spins, pops her with his shield, one shots her, and then she's gone. No, we don't even know if she's gone or not. I didn't see none of her like extra piece fall off so she could regenerate or anything. So she may come back, she may not, but for him to one-shot her as quickly and as powerfully as he did, while it took like at least 2 to 3 different Q ranges to beat them by themselves, that speaks levels on this dude's power. And this is something that can't be downplayed. Like I'm scared that he's gonna get power crept by Lucky, but just as looking at him, he's amazing, just fantastic in terms of power. I just don't know what to say about that. Special, anything you want to add to that?
It's true. Tsurugi, for the most part, is a very interesting character. Ho Soldier Otori Tsurugi. He's been, well, he claims that he's done all these legends like centuries ago. So we can kind of go off the idea that he has experience in the realm of fighting and the realm of dealing with dark matter, most probably. And so after his deep freeze, when he finally comes back, it's almost as if he wakes up after, a very long nap, which is exactly the illusion I was making, which is an ironic thing to reference. But he's a full powerhouse. So when he goes out taking out the Moraimars, jumping from one to another one, destroying them by himself, it's an indication of how strong he is, and also references a large part of his history that we largely don't know about, but we do get more into it in the most recent episode. We do keep records of a large amount of his feats, and by the fact that his own power alone indicates that he's such a massive powerhouse, I think it's also sending a message to the other Q Rangers saying, look, dark matter has taken over the entire universe. We are far behind in terms of freeing it. I'm not going to slow down for you guys in terms of power. I need you to get to my level, which will probably be, I don't know how long it's going to be, because he clearly had centuries to do that for himself. But him being there is definitely an indication for the other Q Rangers to really bulk up and really get an understanding of how high the stakes are in the situation.
Yeah, dude. He's insane in terms of like power. But this isn't like I said, this isn't the first time we've seen this before. Let's look at Jewel of the World's introduction. He pretty much like dog walks the entire Juoja team as it stands by himself. And I think the coolest things about like characters, like the extra characters like that, when they get their feats get introduced, they really have to set them apart from everyone else. So these guys can solo villains by themselves, or if they're evil, they can handle the entire team by themselves. And only when they turn good, we see this weird power creep. I think one of the coolest things to see was when you looked at somebody like Uchi from Kyoryuja. He pretty much had like the aspect of all 5 Rangers. He was strong like
Daigo?
I forgot his name. Yeah, he was strong like Daigo. Well, Daigo's more like well-rounded. So Daigo would be like he was kind of good at everything, just like Uchi was. Everybody in Q Ranger had like a specific role. So like their level was this, but they weren't this. But he could do everything. He had sniping like Kyoryu Black. He had the strength of Kyoryu Blue. He had the the sword skills of Kyoryu Green. He had the kicking skills of Kyoryu Pink. Like he was just like an all-round really good fighter by himself, and he was kind of like, I would say, on par with Daigo. I would argue he was stronger than Daigo as well, in terms of
Right.
strength. But there's so many other big feats that we see that nobody gets like that downplayed, especially in Kamen Rider too. I don't know. Like, this is a whole weird conversation to have because if Toei can do it for Dragon Ball Super, especially what we see now, how come it's not done for other Toku things? And I get it, it's a kid's show, kids don't dig into it that much, but so is Dragon Ball. And that's people still have huge arguments about things of that nature too. Like one of the biggest things was Kuga's like nuclear kick. How powerful is that? The one that could shatter the earth. How do we measure that? How do we measure how strong they are? And what I'm saying, like universe busters or planet busters or something like that. Where do we start to scale from? That's what I'm asking.
Hmm.
I just don't know. I just really don't know. What about you? What do you think about this? I need your advice on this one.
Well, to begin is very complicated because if we were to start from the beginning, for example, uh, we take Go Ranger or we take Ichigo, for example. For their time, they did the greatest feats that they were capable of doing for their time, and so trying to scale them towards writers like Drive and Gaim, who now with all these practical effects and their weapons and stuff like that, comparing them, brawn to actually full scale armored heroes. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's unfair, but it's kind of unjust towards their own characters. So I think a great way to start is probably by identifying what the strongest aspects of each writer or with each Sentai character are, and trying to compare them as best as we can to the next one or to the one that we like to compare. See which aspects in which one would be more predominant as, and the other one would be more predominant in such and such. Um, I think that out of this, what I want to do is not mostly say who would really be stronger, but in a general sense, try and get a feel for just how much power these two can compare to each other when they're at the maximum of their abilities.
Because nobody wants to get downplayed. That's the main thing. Like my biggest concern is
Yeah.
that like a lot of writers just get downplayed just because of like what they can do and stuff like that. Well, we look at
Yeah.
like let's look at the statistics. I've done a lot of videos when I do the writer forums. Guys, check out my channel. You like that plug, right? But a lot of the videos that I've done on my channel, when I talk about their forums, I always mention the statistics there. Punching powers in the tons, kicking powers in the tons, maximum jump height, maximum running speed. All of these numbers are very inconsistent. That's what the word I'm going to look for. Because there's some feats that just don't make sense that can happen and others can't. I was like, okay, cool. If he's this strong with these stats, how come he can't handle this person here? Is it just because he's holding back? Does he not know his full power? What is going on here? I think a prime example of that is X8. X8 is good in terms of scaling because it lets you understand where they are in terms of level. There's no like really strong combat experience with them all, but it's more along the lines of, hey, because I'm level
Right.
50 and you're level 3, I'm going to beat you. Or hey,
Mm.
because you're level 99 and I'm level 99, we're even, but it all comes down to skill. That's easy to
Yeah.
scale. That's super easy. Let's look at like this. Paradox, Kamen Rider Paradox with the gamer driver is level 99. He's greater than most of the other riders behind him. So we're talking Bang Bang Simulations, we're talking Tattle Fantasy. These guys they can't swap hands. They'll get mollywopped. They'll just get slapped around. But Mighty Maximum? No,
Maximum Mighty
Maximum Mighty,
X.
excuse me, I got that backwards. He's 99, so he can swap hands with Paradox. But now it's just along the lines of who can get the advantage beforehand.
Right.
We have no idea
What's
what.
also
Oh,
interesting
excuse me. Go ahead.
What's also interesting that they did in X8 for the most part is there was a point in the show where they were dragging on Dangerous Zombies arc for quite a while, and it was the arc where Kuroto was going more and more crazy. And Kuroto is level 10, but level 10 in the show is not represented by a number; it's represented by a letter, which is X. So after a certain point in the show, they take the variable X and represent it as an unknown variable, which is interesting in the sense because of Dangerous Zombie's powers. Dangerous Zombie was created using some sort of unorthodox ways. So even though Emu was able to get Mighty Brothers and then Maximum Mighty, this Kuroto, as level X, as level 10, was still able to withstand a lot of their attacks, even though they were a higher level, mostly because of his Dangerous Zombie abilities where he could regenerate as part of the Gashat's own unique abilities in itself. But it's also an interesting interpretation because at that moment, it's almost as if it's not level 10 anymore, but it's, as they said, level X because it was created in an unorthodox way outside of the usual realm where Gashats are created. So I thought that's interesting to note, especially during that arc where XA power levels were sort of in doubt by most of the fans.
Absolutely, man. Oh well, when we got to level 10, we could see level 10. Well, that was what Mighty Brothers was level 10 because it was like two fives, I guess. I don't know how
Yeah,
you want to do it, but
Mighty
yeah.
Brothers was level 1. Their level 1 kind of chibi form was level 10, and then when they split in two, that was level 20.
Okay, so they were level 20. Okay, I didn't know that part. See, I'm learning stuff. Yeah, I'm learning stuff. But
That's why double X. One
so
X is 10, the other 10 is X, and then they make the 20. There you go.
I got you. So these guys were like Molly Whopping Dangerous Zombie, but just like you said though, like Dan was tanking a lot of those blows. Like I've obviously he's the tankiest guy in this show. Like he can take blows all day, and he can either stand up or he'll be unaffected by it. But he usually catches his wind and he comes back from it like exponentially. And I think that's really cool to see that. But the X variable is something that comes into play too because just like you said, it's like it seems like X could be whatever I need it to be. So if I need X to equal 50, I can make X equal 50. If I need X to equal 30, it can equal 30. I know I just went like lower there, but that's the point I'm trying to drive across there. Then what about guys who don't even have levels, or we're getting things that supersede stuff? Tattle Legacy's 100. I have no idea what like Muteki is. Is Muteki just like max or infinite or what? Or what is Chronos? Like what level are those guys? But without even having those levels, we know these guys are ridiculous.
It's
These guys
been
have power. Oh,
established.
excuse me.
It's been established that for specifically Kronos and Muteki, both of those characters have exceeded the range of levels, and it's even mentioned in the toy ad for Hyper Muteki. It says "Reveru o koeta." That means I've surpassed all levels. So surpassing all levels, going beyond 99, which is considered to be the maximum, going beyond 100, it sort of gives a basis or a justification, at least, to the reason why Muteki is invincible. You can't touch him because there's no level for you to influence or reduce or even scale or compare him to because he's invincible. So the only reason I felt that they could represent that accurately was that they had him surpassing all levels. Kronos came first, and by the fact that he has the pause ability, it already makes him sufficiently advanced or more advanced than all the other riders in that point in time. So the only force able to surpass the unsurpassable was something else that had to be surpassed. So they created Muteki, then Kuroto created Muteki. Gosh, I love that guy. He created Hyper Muteki. He surpassed all the levels, and that way they were able to counteract Kronos. So in a general standing point, both those forms don't have levels, but for those reasons, I think it's justified.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. How do you feel? Would you feel about like? So here's like where we would get those arguments. Like, well, how would Kronos or Hyper Muteki fare against someone like Gaim? That's like practically Jesus. Like, in final episode, he doesn't even need. He showed us he doesn't even need, the Sengoku driver to transform. He could just say Henshin, and then bam, he gets his armor, and he goes straight into Kiwami arms. But there's so many arguments and stuff like that. You can say stat for stat, this is this and this is this, but if we're talking stats, that would make. I'll use doubles stuff for example. If we look at Fang Joker and Cyclone Joker Extreme, stat wise, Cyclone Joker Extreme is weaker than Fang Joker. However, Cyclone Joker Extreme has like the knowledge of everything on the planet Earth, which is absolutely like amazing in and of itself. So does the lack of numbers be justified by like what kind of abilities they have? Because that's another interesting thing we could talk about and think about too.
Yeah. I believe that the fact that the numbers are able to be justified in a sense where it's a physical fight. And for shows like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, there generally is a physical fight in the beginning before or after they do end up resorting to their own unique abilities. So I guess in terms of power scaling during the time of fighting in which they are directly confronting each other physically with violence. There is a moment where the very same stats, whether we know they're officially confirmed or not, are actually able to surpass the other one in terms of fighting abilities. Whether or not that's taken into account in the Tyson movies, I don't think it is. It's just whose rider kick ends up looking cooler than the other one. But when it comes down to terms of abilities, I believe the range of abilities that can be explored if both individuals are at the maximum of their power, it's definitely turns out to be more of a fight of chance, depending on which rider or which Sentai uses their abilities in the most creative way. So, in the example you gave, which was Gaim Kiwami versus Exade Muteki, Exade Muteki is invincible. And in the show, we see that you can't even touch the guy because he's so fast, or your hand passes right through him. He's incredibly quick. I want to believe that his abilities are subject to the game that he plays. So within the game area, at the very least, his abilities are enhanced to the point where they're at that level. I don't know if whenever X8 transforms, I believe, because we've been shown this before, every area he's in becomes the game area. So if we base it on that, at least, and we bring in Gaim Kiwami arms, Gaim Kiwami would probably be able to use all the resources he has around him. For example, summoning all the rider weapons. Helheim, probably. Though not really Helheim, because Helheim's on another planet now. So that's kind of a disadvantage. And then, you have their confrontations as far as that goes. I can't really say because there's no solid marker, because they both are at the maximum height of their abilities, but it's all about how they handle themselves in that situation.
I understand. I agree with that. See, this is another reason why I like power scaling so hard too, because when you make the scenario or the situation, I argue that there are not enough feats that is shown outside of their like universe for it to really give you like a good idea of what goes on. Because scaling a writer would also mean scaling the kaijin of that series, which is exceptionally hard because let's look at the movies. Whenever there's a summer movie out for a writer and they do a sneak peek of like the newer writer that'll be coming up in the later series, like the later seasons, we watch that new writer in base form, I add, defeat a villain that was higher in level, that took one of the newer forms of the previous writer to defeat him. I'll give you a prime example. The Heisei summer movie, where they had to fight all of the replica like Zodiarts? Was it
Zodiarts?
Zodiarts. Oh, excuse me, why did I say Zodiarts? Zodiarts. Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! In my Zodiarts. They had to fight all of these extra ones, and then these guys go straight into all of their different forms. Meteor and Force are just going in all their forms, really knocking them all out. I think movie versions of the writers are stronger than their TV counterparts off of that logic, just for like the sake of the movie and moving the story along. But when Wizard showed up, Wizard bodied like 3 people, 3, 4, 5 people by itself, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact number, but he bodied them all in base form. So by that logic, would that mean that base form Wizard is stronger than Forze and Meteor by that logic? Is that how that works? It's like, how do you keep the scale going when you do something like that? How do you keep everything leveled and things of this nature? And then that's not even look at Decade. Decade is one of those characters who's like, oh, I'll destroy everybody. If Decade's not even statistically stronger than most of the other writers, who do have access to their hyper forms, and he's said to destroy them all, what does that say about Decade? It's too many like loose ends and too many like phrases that are too vague that we get in these series that make it really hard to discuss how powerful a writer or Super Sentai member, to be exact, is. And I think it's harder to scale them in Kamen Rider than it would be in Super Sentai. How do you feel about that?
You're right. I agree. I agree with that sort of logic, especially in terms of the introduction of a new writer in a summer movie. They tend to be more lenient towards expressing the full range of abilities of the new writer and go off of the fact that, look, you're seeing this writer for the first time. You have no idea what he does. We know what he does. So let us show you why we believe he can beat this guy up. And so for the audience, it's more of like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. Because in the first debut of the writer, you wouldn't want to see him lose or even struggle because you want him to be impressive for when his show actually begins. And it tends to be a trend that they go off of. And so during those moments, they tend to disregard a lot of the basic fundamentals for when the actual writer shows start, unless there is some sort of justification in their own show for why such and such thing was meant to happen. I can give like an example, but this is a Super Sentai example, not really a writer example. When the Gokaigers debuted in the Shinkenger versus Goseiger movie, they referenced that in the show later on, I believe in the 40s, 38 episodes. It was a Time Ranger episode where they traveled back in time. And by that point, they had already come so far enough in the show, I believe it's episode 40, where they were able to be strong enough to beat up whatever generals that were left. Now, the Gokaigers are already strong by themselves, but at least the series acknowledged the fact that later on in the show, they have proven that they had gotten such and such abilities in order to demonstrate why they were strong enough to defeat such and such kaijin, including Shitari, who really doesn't do much of anything. But
Yeah,
in Rider,
absolutely.
it's a lot more complicated because the Rider's only one person. It's all about making that one person look really cool, and they do it so well. And but that's the questionable thing, is that the representations in the movies generally don't match up with the representation in the show. It's more of an aesthetic approach rather than a scientifically or statistically based approach to the writer.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing is for entertainment and story purposes, which is what it's a lot like comic books. Going back to that comparison again, it's that, for the sake of this storyline, I have to make him look really cool. So we're seeing someone maybe like Forza Elect State is tanking blows from the Leo Zodiac, and it's confusing because I was like, he was barely handling him in he was like just it was barely handling him in the TV series in what was the last form? Oh, it's escaping me. Cosmic mode.
Cosmic?
Yeah, there it was. Cosmic. He was having a hard time in Cosmic, but now you're telling me just for the sake of this movie in Elect State he can tank that. I'm confused on just how like the logic and strength of it goes on from there too. So I'm like, I get it. It's for the sake of the movie, but it just
I
seems
also
a
want to
little.
say, for
No,
a
go ahead.
certain part of it, and I believe this kind of goes into the emotional or the lesson behind Kamen Rider Sentai shows. It's not only the strength of the form, but it's also the strength of the rider who wields the form. So the form can have a certain range of abilities, but the growth of the character themselves is what demonstrates how they're able to unleash those abilities as much as they can. So depending on how far the character has advanced in the show, really gives an indication of how well they're able to use their abilities later on in later episodes. So the summer movies for Kamen Rider tend to be in their 40s. So a lot of time has passed for Gentaro to have grown and use these other forms like Cosmic to gain or to get sort of used to handling the strength and power level and physicality of Elec states. So he's a lot more adept at using that form in the summer movie than he was when he first got it. So I think it's an unknown variable, like referencing level X. It's an unknown variable because the strength of or the growth of an individual in a show is not something you can measure with numbers, but it's something that Kamen Rider likes to represent everywhere, and it's an emotional, an emotional advantage that they want to give to the kids when they see them in action.
Gotcha. I feel like you see that representation in forms a lot. I think Gaim did a really good example of this. You kind of see how strong Koda got as the different forms he had until he started doing Jimber Lemon mix. And you would see like the fights that stick out to me the most is the 3-round fight. I call it the 3-round fight between him and Takatora. So he fights Zangetsu, just base orange and base melon, and they go at it, and he's just getting like slaughtered pretty much for the most part. And it really sets the precedence. Okay, Zangetsu's really strong. Then episode, I think 11 or 12 go where they all go for the mission. So Baron, God, what is his name? So Baron, the French guy, the
Bravo.
Bravo. There it is. Bravo, Ryugen. You know, all of the primary ones that we see all get demolished by this one guy. Only for us to go, okay, he's gonna get even stronger next episode because now he has a new driver and a new lock seed, so power will go up from there. How do we handle that? We get Coda, who goes into like Jimber Lemon mix, who's not really on par with them per se, but more along the lines is he's got scaled up higher a little bit. I can do this, I can do that now, and he was doing a pretty decent job handling himself against Takatora in round two. Like I still takes the L for that one. I still want to give him the L because of what happened in the situation. He found out the truth and stuff like that. But when he comes back in round three, you see him start really taking over again. So it goes back to what you're saying about the growth of said character. You can even see it with Kaito when he gets his. You know, he goes from banana to mango and selectively using mango here and there. I wish that got shown more. And then fighting that overlord, the red one, he goes straight into lemon energy and becomes like Baron Lemon. And that was a whole new change of like power in and of itself as well. So seeing that, I was like, okay, I can kind of see like the level of growth between them here. I still want to say the devices that they have play a huge role in how powerful they are, but how it's used, or like just like you say, it goes back to the user and the growth of said user. So it's hard for Kamen Rider. Super Sentai is easy, especially when it comes to the extra rangers. Like when we look at Abade Killer, my favorite Sentai character ever. Like Abade Killer came on the scene and he was stronger than all four of them. Just he would dog walk all of them on a regular basis. He'll pick them off one by one and start doing other things with them. The dude was so strong. In terms of feats, a lot of them didn't have to be physical. It was all about capability. So he controls Top Galer, who in the past couldn't be controlled. Well, controls a loose term in this one, I'll say. You know, he has them cooperating with him. Takes one of the other Bakuryus on his side. Then he goes and he forcefully uses this driver. Oh, not driver. This brace that's technically a bomb. With like controlling that and then still getting a rampage mode out of it, which wasn't supposed to happen if I'm not mistaken. That shows his level of character in terms of power and how he's really like a super strong powerhouse, but he means nothing against Abade Max. But that's just using that as an example, going, hey, yeah, that this is what power looks like in Super Sentai. I always feel like the red guys get scaled above everybody else. I want to shout out Proto Dubs for doing a video on why Ninja sucked and how he could have made it better. And he mentioned about Takaharu as a character. Is like he's just there and he's strong for no reason. We just see him get stronger. Just, oh yeah, I can do this because I'm the Red Ranger. Bang bang bang, and he just does stuff. There's no growth that goes into that. You know, I would argue anybody who watched Dragon Ball Z may get this reference. I know you might not, Special, but I would say character development that makes a form stronger or a rider stronger would be the equivalent of like Saiyans in Dragon Ball Z getting a Zenkai boost. They get knocked down, they get back up, and they get stronger from it, and then they go from there. But that's just how I see it. Thoughts on that?
Well, the Zenkai boost term is unfamiliar to me.
Okay.
But excluding that, being at Sentai power-ups are a lot easier to register. I was just thinking, I don't know why I put these two specific ones together. I was thinking of Akaninja Chozetsu versus Hyper Tokyo Ichigo. So I was thinking that in the range of abilities, they're both fairly basic. They have very similar skill sets, besides the fact that, okay, one can throw flaming shurikens, the other one can, probably go a lot faster. But in terms of power, if we were to compare those two together, let's say that in terms of speed and in strength, Chozetsu has a speed and strength of the Otomonin, like the Hao Otomonin. And for Hyper Resha, he has the strength and the power of Hyper Resha. So then you would come to think, okay, which one's stronger, an Otomonin or a Resha? So you'd probably go to the stats for either one and compare them from there. That's not said to more justify which one of them is stronger, because then again, you'd be going into the range of which one is more creative in their usage of said form. But with Sentai, it's a lot easier to compare because generally in their base forms, before they get their upgrade forms, a lot of Sentai's power levels are basically the same. And the way you register the skill set of each Sentai is that's what differentiates them from either one, the level of skill and what makes them unique. When it comes to their super forms, and when you pit those two together, it's also a little bit about skill, but it's also about which side has more on terms of power or speed. And since Sentai power ups tend to reference, especially nowadays, they tend to reference a lot of previous items they've held, like their mecha, their resha, their gabutiras, their otomonins. You can easily go back and compare them to the strength of their own forms. That's not to say, oh, this resha is certainly better or faster or stronger than Gabutira. That's why Tokyuja is better. No, it's to say that in a general sense, these forms gain their abilities from their mecha, and that's how it's easy to compare them in terms of power to one another.
I've never thought about that. I'll be honest with you. I never really thought about that because I always go back to the, well, versatility versus this set has more obviously, so this is stronger, I would say. I never looked at super modes like in comparison to their mechas because I've always was like, okay, let's look at these guys like stat for stat, like you said, we'll check them out from there. Now let's look at what each set can do and how versatile that is in combat. Like going to let's just go back to Kamen Rider for a second, then we'll go like forward from there. No, they'll go to Kamen Rider for a sec. Fourze, to me, cosmic level Fourze would be stronger than Shining Agito because in terms of versatility and things you could do on the fly, Cosmic Fourze can mix and match all the other 39 astral switches he wants into different things to aid him in battle. So if he wants to do like an ice print boot on you, he can do the ice print boot. It'll probably freeze you, and then he can combine that with like maybe electric and like the wires that he has. There's so many different things he can do in terms of like versatility and combat that would make him more capable than Shining Agito, excuse me. But Shining Agito just may be, just bed like in hand-to-hand combat, like I said, or experience-wise, maybe better because he's been doing it a lot longer. We don't know. I always surmise that sometimes that would come down to, custom stuff like not custom, but versatility, how their final forms really work. If you have this form, you have access to all of the things from your show that would give you the advantage. So that's why like a lot of, and I'm going to quote Neo Heisei, even though that's not what it's called, a lot of the Neo Heisei writers, in my opinion, and some of the research I've been doing, I would say, are stronger than some of their predecessors from the Heisei era. Not to say that the Heisei era is weak, but it's just they have more utility, more resources, more things that can come into play in a combat situation that they could use that Toei just won't show.
Right. I agree with you there. Referencing like, Neo Heisei, there's this divide. Gosh, I hate the term Neo Heisei, but anyway, but considering that Neo Heisei has a full range of like, okay, what's the best combination of abilities that we can do to gain the advantage, or what's a unique way in which we can express all of the range of abilities that we've gotten so far on the show that have been expressed by other writers, mainly. In Heisei shows, generally, when they get their super forms, namely Agito, namely Kuga, things like that, I want to say that the source of their power doesn't come so much, in part, it does come from the items that they do use, but it also sometimes references a higher power. So, for example, in Agito, you could say, oh, every form he claims, he becomes closer and closer to a god. And what can you compare the power of a god to? You'd be comparing a god to someone who can combine switches. That's not saying, I'm not going to say a lot, that's not saying a lot in this thing, but that's not saying that Agito would use his godly power to obliterate Fourze. But I'm just saying that in terms of physical ability alone, Agito is quite powerful, but he also has the abilities of a higher deity that they tend to reach up. In Kiva, you get Emperor form, and Emperor form gets a lot of access to these hidden Fangire abilities because he accepts his Fangire self. And so, in terms of that, what's a Fangire compared to an Overlord, which is what Kota is now? They're both gods in their own respects, but it comes down to like, okay, will a Fangire just like shatter like glass when he's defeated, or will Kota just like retreat into the forest? It's what I like to do in these power scaling sorts of things is give the forms a basis so we can have them to compare it to. And Sentai, it's with their mechas generally, and with Rider, it's generally something that they reference in the show, be it a higher power or be it a creature that by using their final form, they're slowly turning into.
I think that's oh man, it's so difficult because like I said, that opens another can. I feel like every time we open and we try to close a case, there's another one that immediately opens that
There you
immediately
go.
says if you're comparing it to this, well we have to go back and say how much is this. So there's so much
That's where they get you.
yeah, that's where they get you. You have to like backtrack so much for it. It's like, okay, to recognize who would be stronger than who, we have to compare their kaijin. If we have to compare their kaijin, who can tank what and what and what. Um, I would say like maybe the Orphanix are stronger in terms of strength than maybe excuse me, I don't know, maybe the Dopants, because there's a human limitation with the Dopants compared
Right.
to the Orphanix, who are like just a new form of creature by themselves with enhanced abilities. So
Right.
we've seen top tier ones like the Dragon Orphanic, and we've seen top tier Dopants like Terror or
Yeah.
Old or Nazca or Weather. So the question is that who could tank the most damage between the two?
Right.
Who is stronger in terms of this and that? And I would say the Orphanix are, because they don't have that limitation, that human bound limitation to them. Because
Mm.
we don't know what a memory break is per se. That stops them from detransforming. Maybe we could just count, for the sake of like the argument, any final attack that they do could be considered a memory break that beats this or something along those lines. But I would say you would look at the kaijin of whatever series it is, and you play the backtrack game to figure out where they are, and then you'll go from there. And that's
Right.
one way you could do it for Kamen Rider. For Super Sentai, it's normally if it's a Red Ranger, it's whoever's strong, like whoever his rival is, you would compare their strengths from there, because they usually follow the same like pattern. Rival comes and appears. They duke it out. They get dog walked. Red Ranger gets dog walked. He goes recover. They fight again in round two. He swaps hands with him, and he gets the advantage. And then they fight a third time, and somehow he gets a power up. The rival gets a power up, or he has some new move he was holding back. Red Ranger gets knocked down. They come back. They swap hands again. It's like this weird rinse and repeat cycle with
Mm.
different fights along the sides between then. And you can watch the growth between the two, because, attack that the Red Ranger probably couldn't handle in one series. Oh, not one series, in one episode, he tanks in further episodes on, indicating how strong he is now.
Mm.
Which I think you see that a lot between definitely guys like Shinken Red and Jizo. I think his name is Jizo.
Juzo.
Juzo. Why do I call him Jizo? Oh man, I'm brain somewhere else right now. Well, Shiken Red and Juzo. You saw that a little bit with uh, Bosco and Marvelous, and you kind of see that a lot more frequently with Zed and did I call him Zed? Right, not right. Jesus, I am out of it today. I apologize, guys. With Toku Ichigo and I think he's Zed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and Zed. You can kind of see that a lot more with those guys when they duke it out, because you can kind of see where they are in terms of strength, respectively. So, it's this is a can of worms that I'm looking forward to opening, specifically with different writers and Sentai teams and watching and doing first feats and stuff. But this is gonna be complicated. I'm so sorry I had to drag you along for this.
No, it's perfectly good. Because the thing is, it's actually helped me a lot because I hadn't thought about this in the way, but as you were talking, I was starting to think of, okay, what in terms of power, what can we compare it to? Because individually, you can say, yes, this guy has the stats to beat this guy. But when you give the form some sort of a larger basis, it gives you more of a stronghold to understand exactly what power each of them are. So even though we may never be able to understand which riders are stronger than which riders, consulting even their stats and including their range of abilities, at least we can come close enough to let you know how to do it. So sometime in the future, you guys can do it for yourselves because we're done here. No, I'm kidding.
I think, if anything, I think the easiest thing to do, or the best thing to do, is to start figuring out where people stand. And if we can figure out where people stand, like in terms of like abilities and limitations and this and that, then that argument will be easier to do, or that, you guys can have those discussions, so those arguments will be better to have there. So I guess this is where we'll go ahead and wrap this up. We'll wrap this, this is actually like a longer one than anything I've done. We're gonna wrap it up here. What we'll do is that we'll try to do this more often than not. I can't promise you this will be done weekly, but whenever we do one, we'll definitely sit down and we'll talk about a specific, writer or a specific set team, or even just a solo Sentai member, and kind of break down how powerful they are in relation to most of the things that we see. We'll try to use math and science. I got a physics guy I talk to about a lot of stuff, and we could even talk about some of the things that we see that need a good explanation on. Like, I'm gonna have to explain to some people about clock up really soon, so good, look forward for something along those lines, and maybe with the limitations of clock up and what you can and can't do with it, because abilities are something that plays a key role in it as well. Before we get
I definitely will be consulting a religious expert for more info on these godly abilities, because I'm suspicious.
Okay, we might have to do that. See me, if you guys can't see me, but I'm rubbing my chin in intrigue. Before we get out of here, Special Form, is there any place you want to plug in before we get out of here?
Not really. A lot of you guys probably know me, and if you don't, you should know that I do upload previews and trailers, and I subtitle them the moment they are released. I also include descriptions in the preview and links to where you can find every certain episode or every single thing you could ever find. I'm also starting my own series after a very long time about the villain factions of Tokusatsu called Into Darkness. You could check out the one I did on Inversia from Maji Ranger. Next one is going to be the Akugata Rinjuken from Geki Ranger, so I hope you look forward to that.
And everybody subscribe to his channel. And if you subscribe, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you aren't, I lost my train of thought there. Jesus, I'm losing it. If you are subscribed to his channel, don't hesitate to just let him know, hey, you heard this, you guys loved it. If this is something you guys want us to keep doing, just don't hesitate. Why did I say hesitate? I'm losing it, Special. I'm losing it. Don't hesitate to let me know in the comment section below, and also let us know who would you like us to see scale first. Like, we'll do our best to hit as many as we want to.
If you are here from my channel, please subscribe to Lambo Calrissian, because there's probably a lot of you out there. He does amazing videos. He goes in depth about a lot of Kamen Riders, specifically Double, but I'm sure he's going to move on to do other things. I can't wait to see his content. He does amazing things. He does what I sometimes wish I could do, and I'm jealous of what other people get to do and I don't have the time to do. So if you guys are really interested in stuff like that, please subscribe to him. He's an amazing person.
I just tell people all the time, hi, my name's Lambo Calrissian, and I make videos about stuff you're too lazy to read. I love you guys, but that's literally what I do. But definitely, thank you so much for that. What we're going to do is go ahead and slide out of here. If you guys don't have anything else, well, you probably will in the comment section, so do that. I'm losing my mind. I'm going to go ahead and just stop talking. I'm Lambo Calrissian, reminding you guys to keep calm and Toku on. Peace.
Dane.